Alright, so now we're going to get into weapon abilities, weapon passives, and weapon mastery tree perk selections. Now, each weapon has 6 different abilities that you can choose from, and each weapon also has 2 different trees that you can select these abilities and passives from as well. First, we're going to be going with the rapier selections. Rapier trees are the blood tree and the grace tree. So, for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to be going over each ability and each passive within both trees. I'm only going to be going over the abilities and passives that I use. The first ability that I pick up, Evade. Evade is basically a short invincibility frame or an iframe. It's an animation cancel, and it's a instant directional input change. So the skill cap for this weapon, in my opinion, is the highest out of all of the abilities in the rapier trees. And some may even say it's the hardest ability to use in the game, just because of how versatile it is and how high the skill ceiling is for using this ability. So now, once you pair the ability itself with the upgrades within the grace tree, not only is it a great defensive tool, it's a great offensive tool as well. Now, typical animation cancels that people use with Evade is a heavy attack right into a light attack. This is what like 90% of people that play Rapier know how to do. They riposte and then they do an evade right after they do a heavy attack into a light attack. That's your typical Rapier combo for a typical Rapier player. Now, depending on how fast you are, you can do this in less than half a second, and it's almost going to seem instant on your opponent's end just because of how fast you're doing this. Like I said, it's an animation cancel, so you can immediately start using a light attack right after. So you can also do an animation cancel for every other ability that the Rapier has. So you can animation cancel your Fleche mid-Fleche. You can animation cancel your Flourish and Finish mid-Flourish and Finish. At any point during either of these other abilities animations, you can evade, canceling the animation, immediately taking you out of that ability's animation, and pretty much resetting your character, if that makes sense. So now let's go over the upgrades to the evade ability within the Grace Tree. First one, Crescendo. The Crescendo perk reduces the cooldown of evade by 30% for each light attack that you land. Now the light attack chain for the Rapier, it's 4 hits in total. 1 jab, it's 2 speedy swipes, and a jab for the last hit. Realistically, you only need 3 light attacks to reset the evade cooldown completely. Typically, the way that you would want to do this is instead of waiting for the last jab of the light attack chain to finish, you want to evade after the 2 speedy swipes and then immediately evade to start the animation light attack chain again. You rarely want to be hitting with the last hit of your light attack chain. It's slow, it's clunky compared to what the Rapier can do. Moving on to the next perk, we have Allegro. The Allegro perk grants you 20% movement speed after successfully evading through an enemy attack. This is very good for positioning yourself if you can actually do the iframe through an enemy's attack. You get 20% movement speed. It's great for positioning yourself if you can get it. Really, it's hit or miss a lot of the times because of the weirdness, I would say, of Evade's iframe and enemy attacks. It may look on your screen that you evaded something, but the system itself doesn't register that you successfully dodged through an attack, even though, you know, in your heart, you already know evade got you out of it. So really, in general, the Allegro passive can be used offensively for positioning yourself or defensively if you successfully evade while you're running away and somebody shoots you with an arrow, for example, and you evade through it. You immediately get your 20% movement speed, and now you can run away faster. Moving on now to the next upgrade, Adagio. Adagio grants you 15% increased damage on your next light attack for 1 second or on the next hit if you evade forward. This upgrade basically rewards you with extra damage for using evade offensively. This is not a defensive perk. This is pure offense. Finally, we have Breathe In. This passive grants you 20 stamina after successfully evading through an enemy attack. Your proficiency with this ability can pretty much be measured by how often you can actually proc this passive. This passive is very strong. Before the Rapier nerfs, you would get the 20 stamina just for using evade. It was extremely strong then, and if you can proc it now, it's very strong now. The evade ability in general, it's extremely versatile. It rewards skilled players with extra damage, extra movement speed. It takes a lot of practice to get to, I guess, that stage where you can proc the passives reliably. And really, the risk of this ability, if you miss your iframe, is you take damage. So in the end, it's a high risk, high reward ability. If you do it right, you get rewarded. If you don't do it right, you get hit. It's pretty much how it goes. The next ability that we're going to be going over is Fleche. Fleche is a 10-meter dash that pierces through players, and it deals 145% weapon damage to enemies. This is another very versatile ability, since it can be used as a gap closer, it can be used as a gap widener, and it can be used as a positioning tool. It allows you to pass through players, so it's better than charge from the Great Axe, and it's better than burnout from the Fire Staff, just because you're able to actually pass through players, not only enemies but also your teammates if they're body blocking you. So this will get you out of a crowd. So the first Fleche perk or Fleche upgrade is Quick Lunge. Quick Lunge reduces the ability's cooldown by 80% if you get the killing blow while using Fleche. This can also work on, you know, low-level mobs and like turkeys and rabbits while you're traveling throughout the open world. It's pretty much a quick reset to your ability while you're traveling in order to get to wherever you need to go faster. In actual PvP, this perk is not the easiest to actually proc. The most reliable way in actual PvP to proc this is if you're in open world and you see a downed enemy and you fleche right through them. That's when Quick Lunge will proc and you get your cooldown reduction for this ability. The next upgrade, Backside. After performing Fleche, your next critical strike within the next 5 seconds deals 15% more damage. This perk is great for that extra burst damage once you position yourself behind an enemy, pretty much guaranteeing a critical hit and also guaranteeing the next critical strike damage that you're going to be getting from Backside. So even if you can't get behind your opponent with just the Fleche on its own, you still have 5 seconds from the time that you use the ability to run around someone, dodge roll to somebody's back, or even evade behind them. So you have time from the time that you use Fleche to get that extra critical strike damage through. And now the last perk, or the last upgrade to Fleche, is Interruption. Pressing light attack during the Fleche animation stops the dash, and you will perform a short stab in front of you. This is how you get the most DPS out of Fleche, because the short stab is 115% weapon damage right there. And the way that you want to set this up is by using Fleche to get to your opponent's back, and then using Interruption to do the short stab against their back. Pretty much ensuring a critical hit. You're proccing backside as well. The way that you use Fleche, or the most DPS they can get out of Fleche, is up to you on how you want to use it. There's one more thing about Interruption that a lot of people don't know. The stab that you do, it's about a second long. So think of a static hitbox that you have in front of you for about a second. If you move your camera fast enough, instead of it being a short stab, it's a short sweep around you. Now, the last ability that we use is Flourish and Finish. So the first part of this ability, or the Flourish part of this ability, it's a wide arc sweeping attack that deals 90% weapon damage, and it also staggers enemies as well as pushes them back. Flourish is a great tool for interrupting your opponent's abilities, as well as creating distance between you and your opponent. If you use Flourish, you can also press the basic attack button, and then that's when you will perform the finish part of the ability. So for the second part of the ability, it's called Finish. Finish lunges you forward about 5 meters, and if you hit an enemy with Finish, it's going to stagger them again, as well as deal 120% weapon damage. So going into the abilities perks, we have with Flare. This perk grants you grit for the entire animation of the Flourish and Finish animation. Let me explain what grit does. Grit gives your character a white glowing aura that prevents you from being staggered or knocked down by enemy attacks. Now, you can still be rooted, you can still be slowed, and you can still be stunned during grit. But as far as staggers and knockdowns go, you're not going to get staggered or knocked down while you have grit active. Now, you can also extend the duration of the animation by delaying the light attack press that you're going to do. And you can pretty much extend this delay to about 1.5 seconds. About a second and a half is how long you can delay the finish portion before the ability goes on cooldown. So during this delay, you can move your camera and change the direction of your character's lunge without actually facing your character in that direction. And I mean like your character's body. So this is a great way to like play mind games against your opponent who maybe has their block up, and then during the delay they drop it. That's when you use your lunge. Now the last upgrade that we're going to be taking for Flourish and Finish is Swagger. Swagger gains us 20 stamina after successfully hitting a target with Finish, and I mean, as a light build, you're going to be a big fan of stamina, because you're going to rely pretty heavily on dodge rolling for your setups, as well as your spacing. So overall, my reasoning for going with these three abilities is versatility. Yes, I could play Riposte and have an actual stun within the build, but after the nerfs and just the inconsistency of it, it can be really punishing if you use this against a player who's used to playing against a Rapier Riposte. So for that reason, that is why I do not run this. It's not versatile enough for me compared to Flourish and Finish. And so yeah, that's really the name of the game as to why I run these three abilities, just versatility. So now we're going to be going over the rest of the perks and abilities within the trees. I'm not going to be going so much into like nuanced details for each of these perks just because they're generic rapier passives and not direct upgrades to specific rapier abilities. So first, Unguard. This gives us 10% increased damage on targets that are over 50% health. It's a great perk for pretty much initiating combat with the rapier. And next point, we're going to be taking Refreshing Strikes. Refreshing Strikes reduces all of our rapier cooldowns by 1% on any rapier hit. Just cooldown reduction, great to have in any build, to be honest. And now moving back over to the Grace Tree. First perk that we're going to do, Desperation. This is another percent damage increase for the weapon, and it procs when we are below 40% stamina. Next passive that we take, Controlled Breathing. For every rapier hit, we get 3 stamina back. This is a great perk in general for the build just because for every hit that we get, it's just building us up towards another dodge roll that we need to do. So it's just another iframe, more positioning, more movement, great perk. Next we have Perfectionist. This is another percent damage increase while our health is at full. So in total, in tandem with the other percent damage perks that we can select, we can get up to 30% increased damage just simply by rolling into combat and starting off with the rapier. So that's Unguard with 10% damage, Perfectionist 10% damage, and Desperation 10% damage. All right, next passive that we take is Red Curtains. So this perk gives us a 5% cooldown reduction on all rapier cooldowns every time that we get a critical hit. Because of our playstyle and gearing the playstyle towards proper positioning for crits, we definitely try to take full advantage of this passive. And paired with Refreshing Strikes for the additional 1% on any hit, getting a critical hit pretty much gives us a 6% cooldown reduction in total. And finally, for our final point, we go with the capstone for the Grace Tree, Momentum. Momentum lets us deal 30% increased damage on our next light or heavy attack after performing an ability. And this expires after 3 seconds or on the next hit, or the next light or heavy attack that actually hits. This passive, or this capstone, is why we can be so aggressive with the rapier. The burst damage that you can get with this perk is insane sometimes. Like once you actually get your rotation set and you understand exactly how your cooldowns work, the burst is insane. Now, this isn't a buff that you can see above your health bar, but it does show on your rapier in the form of a glowing aura on your rapier. So once you see that aura on your rapier, that's when you know that momentum is up. You need to hit something.